Jennifer Aniston grew into one of the most beloved figures in modern television, yet beneath the familiar warmth of her smile lived a story she rarely allowed the world to see. From the outside she appeared steady, confident, always moving forward. But privately she carried a tender truth that shaped her journey far more than fame or success ever did. It was a truth rooted in connection, loss, and the kind of love that leaves an imprint long after life has changed. She built her career with discipline and grace. Still, her heart was shaped by moments the public never witnessed, quiet exchanges, and shared hopes that stayed with her through the most celebrated years of her life. Those closest to her often sensed there was someone she remembered with a softness that time could not erase, someone whose presence once offered comfort during seasons when everything around her felt uncertain. Only recently has Jennifer begun to speak openly about that chapter, choosing to reveal a confession she held close for decades. It is not dramatic or sensational, but deeply human, a reflection on the love that steadied her, challenged her, and stayed with her in ways she never expected, until now. Jennifer Aniston's understanding of love began long before she stepped into the bright lights of Hollywood, shaped by moments that carried both tenderness and uncertainty. She was born in Sherman Oaks in 1969, the daughter of two actors whose lives were built around auditions, rehearsals, and the unpredictable rhythm of the entertainment world. Her father, John Aniston, carried a calm steadiness into every room, a presence she often looked toward for reassurance. Her mother, Nancy Dow, brought a quiet determination shaped by her own struggles, yet their home was far from the safe harbor young Jennifer longed for. Even in childhood, she sensed the emotional distance that lingered between them. It became the first lesson she learned about love, that sometimes the people we need most cannot give us what we hope for. As she grew older, the tension in the house became more difficult to ignore. At 9 years old, she watched her parents' marriage fracture, a moment that settled into her memory with a heaviness she carried into adulthood. The divorce did not erupt in dramatic scenes, but in small, subtle shifts, the kind a child feels before she understands them. She remembered quiet rooms, half-finished conversations, the sense that something was slipping away even before anyone explained it to her. Those early years left her with a lingering belief that love was fragile, that it could break without warning. It was a belief that stayed with her for decades, shaping every connection that would come later. Despite the emotional distance around her, Jennifer learned early to find comfort in expression. Drawing, acting, and storytelling became her escape, places where her feelings made sense. Teachers noticed her imagination before she ever realized how powerful it was. Yet even in these safe spaces, she brought with her the old fear that affection could fade, that people could leave just as quickly as they arrived. She later spoke about those years with reflection rather than resentment, acknowledging that the instability of her childhood shaped her drive, her need for independence, and her desire to build something steadier than what she grew up with. That longing for emotional security would quietly guide many of her decisions, even at the height of her fame. Her relationship with her mother remained complicated. Nancy, shaped by her own past wounds, expected perfection from a daughter who simply wanted acceptance. Jennifer carried those expectations like an invisible weight, trying to become the person her mother needed while learning to protect the gentler parts of herself. The distance between them widened as Jennifer reached adulthood. Interviews, public comments, and misunderstandings created barriers that took years to untangle. Still, Jennifer later faced these memories with a softness that came only with time, recognizing the pain that shaped her mother's reactions. This reflection helped her understand the deeper ache she carried, the need to feel seen, valued, and emotionally safe. When Jennifer finally stepped into the world of acting professionally, she did so with an inward promise that her life would look different from the instability she came from. Yet the lessons of childhood remained with her. She approached relationships with caution, searching for the stability she had always missed, yet fearing the vulnerability required to truly let someone in. Fame did not erase those early wounds. It only magnified them. The lights were brighter, the expectations heavier, but the ache remained the same. She longed for a connection that felt steady, gentle and true, the kind of love she could trust even in silence. By the time she entered her early 20s, Jennifer had become a woman shaped not by bitterness, but by resilience. She carried hope carefully, holding on to the belief that one day she would find the emotional safety she never had growing up. What she did not yet know was that her life was about to change. The person who would reshape her understanding of love was already moving through the same world, unaware that their paths were quietly drawing closer. Only then would she learn what it felt like to be seen with tenderness rather than expectation, a feeling that would stay with her long after everything else faded. By the time Jennifer Aniston reached the mid-1990s, her life had shifted into a world she once only imagined. In 1994, she stepped onto the set of a new sitcom called Friends, unaware that the role of Rachel Green would transform her from a young actress searching for stability into one of the most recognized faces in modern television. The show brought laughter, structure, and a sense of belonging she had never experienced growing up. For the first time, she found herself surrounded by people who felt like family, colleagues who showed up for one another with reliability and affection. Yet even as her career soared, the emotional quiet inside her life remained. She had built success, but she still longed for a connection that felt personal and steady, something untouched by fame. During these rising years, Hollywood often placed her in the same orbit as actors whose paths aligned with hers. But one connection began more softly than the others. Through mutual friends and overlapping professional circles, Jennifer met Brad Pitt, a man whose career was climbing alongside hers. Their early conversations were unremarkable in the public eye, but meaningful in ways that surprised her. He carried a calm sincerity that contrasted the noise of their industry, offering her a steadiness she had rarely encountered. She was accustomed to environments where affection fluctuated, yet here was someone who listened with intention, someone who made space for her without expecting anything in return. Their friendship grew naturally, grounded in shared experiences of sudden fame and the pressure that came with it. They understood the strain of long workdays, the lack of privacy, the weight of being admired by millions yet known by few. Jennifer often reflected on how unusual it felt to find comfort in someone who seemed to navigate those challenges with gentleness rather than intensity. By 1998, their connection had deepened into a relationship that drew public interest, but privately it remained rooted in simplicity. He became a source of quiet reassurance during a period when her life was becoming increasingly chaotic with the global success of Friends. Jennifer was careful with her emotions, shaped by the fears born in childhood, yet she found herself opening up in ways that felt unfamiliar. She later described those years with gratitude, remembering how he approached her with patience and respect. The relationship evolved slowly, strengthened by shared values and an understanding of what it meant to live under constant attention. They formed a partnership that felt grounded, the very thing she had always believed was out of reach. Brad's presence did for her what stability had never done before, offering her a sense of safety that was neither dramatic nor fragile. As their bond grew, it became clear to those around them that this relationship carried a deeper resonance. Jennifer had always hoped for love that felt dependable, love that did not shift with circumstance. In him, she found a version of that hope. Their connection became a quiet refuge from the demands of their careers, a place where she could be more than the character the world adored. This was not the loud or glamorous beginning that Hollywood stories often portray. It was simple, steady, and honest, a foundation built on shared trust. By the late 1990s, Jennifer began to understand that this relationship was unlike anything she had experienced. He gave her something she had been searching for since childhood, a feeling that her heart could rest without fear of being uprooted. Yet even in this stability, life continued to move quickly around them. Fame did not slow, schedules did not ease, and the world watched every step they took. Still, the strength of their early bond remained, forming the groundwork for a future they both believed in. What Jennifer did not yet realize was that this love, born from quiet beginnings, would shape her life far more deeply than she could imagine, becoming the emotional center point of her story for years to come. When Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt married in Malibu in July of 2000, the ceremony reflected the quiet sincerity that had rooted their relationship from the start. It was a celebration held under soft light, surrounded by people who understood how deeply they valued privacy. For Jennifer, the moment felt like a promise she had been moving toward since childhood, a vow that love could be steady, patient, and enduring. She entered that marriage with a heart shaped by early fractures, yet strengthened by years of growth. In Brad, she believed she had found the emotional foundation she had always longed for, a sense of home built on mutual respect and shared commitment. As Friends continued its remarkable success throughout the early 2000s, Jennifer balanced her responsibilities with the ease of someone who valued the people around her. She filmed long days on set until the series ended in 2004, carrying the rhythm of her character with her while nurturing the partnership she cared so deeply about. Behind the scenes, she and Brad supported each other's careers, navigating the unpredictable pace of the entertainment world. Their life together was not marked by extravagance. It was shaped by routines, shared meals, and moments of connection that anchored them in ways Jennifer quietly cherished. Yet the weight of public attention began to build in ways neither had fully anticipated. Questions about children and timing followed Jennifer wherever she went, creating a pressure she tried her best to deflect. Interviews often narrowed her life into a single expectation, overshadowing the fullness of her accomplishments. She remained dedicated to her work, knowing the final seasons of Friends required her complete focus. Brad's career expanded equally quickly, with roles that demanded extensive travel and long filming schedules. Their marriage was not defined by conflict, but by the challenge of maintaining intimacy under the scrutiny of an audience that believed it had the right to interpret their choices. Despite their deep affection, both were faced with the realities of managing parallel careers that offered little room for pause. Jennifer never spoke with bitterness about those years. Instead, she reflected on how the intensity of their professional lives created an emotional strain they did not recognize at first. They tried to protect their marriage from the demands surrounding them, but the pace of their world rarely slowed enough for them to catch their breath. Every decision became magnified, every absence questioned, every silence filled with assumptions from people who knew only fragments of their truth. Inside their home, the pressures were quieter but still present. Jennifer had long carried the desire for connection that felt safe and lasting, yet she also valued her career and the independence it provided. Brad's commitments took him across continents as he pursued roles that pushed his artistic boundaries. Their love did not fade easily, but its balance wavered as both tried to fulfill the expectations placed upon them. Jennifer often faced public narratives that reduced complex decisions into simple conclusions, yet she remained steadfast in speaking about their marriage with dignity and gratitude. By the time Friends reached its final episode in 2004, Jennifer was at a crossroads she had not expected. She had built a career that exceeded anything she imagined in her youth, but she felt the quiet strain of a marriage stretched between two demanding worlds. She continued to hold on to the hope that stability could be restored, that the foundation they had built would remain strong enough to carry them through the shifting tides of fame and responsibility. As those years unfolded, the emotional weight they carried began to shape their choices in ways neither could have predicted. Their marriage still held affection and respect, yet the balance that once steadied them had begun to thin. Jennifer would later look back on this period with clarity, acknowledging how love can remain true even as life moves in directions the heart struggles to follow. Those moments marked the beginning of a shift, one that would quietly lead them toward an ending she never wanted, but eventually understood. The shift in Jennifer Aniston's life arrived gradually, almost silently, long before the world realized anything was changing. By the start of 2005, the weight of their schedules, combined with years of public expectation, created a distance that neither she nor Brad wanted but could no longer ignore. Their separation, announced in January of 2005, was met with an intensity that stunned both of them. What had been a quiet, private unraveling suddenly became a global headline, interpreted, debated, and reshaped by voices far removed from their reality. Yet inside the story, away from cameras and speculation, there remained a deep respect that guided every step they took. Jennifer later reflected on that period with honesty rather than resentment. She understood that their marriage had not ended because of betrayal or dramatic conflict, but because life had placed them in different emotional spaces. Their careers continued to rise, pulling them into separate directions with a force neither had expected when they exchanged vows years earlier. The demands were constant, the pressure unrelenting, and the time they needed to nourish their connection grew smaller with each passing year. When the decision to separate finally came, it was filled with sadness, but also with a shared understanding that they had reached a point where love alone could not bridge the gaps created by circumstance. By the time their divorce was finalized in October of 2005, Jennifer found herself confronting a grief she had never fully prepared for. It was not just the end of a marriage, it was the loss of the emotional safety that relationship had offered her. She had believed deeply in the bonds they built, holding on to the hope that their foundation might steady itself again. Yet as she moved through the early months of their separation, she realized that the heart sometimes breaks quietly, without anger, leaving behind an ache shaped not by conflict, but by acceptance. Public scrutiny made those months even more difficult. Speculation replaced truth, and assumptions overshadowed the quiet dignity with which they tried to navigate the transition. Jennifer remained committed to speaking only with grace, choosing not to engage the narratives that attempted to define her life. She focused instead on healing, surrounding herself with friends and family who understood the complexity of the emotions she was carrying. Behind closed doors, she allowed herself to feel the sadness she rarely showed publicly, the sorrow of losing someone who had meant so much to her for so many years. Yet even as they moved forward on separate paths, the respect between Jennifer and Brad never faded. They maintained a steady kindness toward one another, aware of the history they shared and the years that shaped them both. Their split was often misunderstood, but Jennifer held firm to the truth that their relationship had been built on sincerity, not spectacle. She did not rewrite their story or diminish its impact. Instead, she honored it quietly, acknowledging that some connections remain significant even after they change form. In the years that followed, Jennifer learned to live with the memory of what she had lost. She continued working, rebuilding her sense of self with the maturity of someone who had weathered both triumph and heartbreak. She carried the lessons of her marriage into the chapters that came next, understanding that love can be both beautiful and fragile. The ending haunted her not because of regret, but because it marked the close of a period that had shaped her more deeply than she realized at the time. Still, as she grew, Jennifer found clarity. Some relationships do not fade. Even as life evolves, some people remain part of our emotional fabric, woven into our story in ways that time cannot undo. Brad had been that for her, not as a figure of drama, but as a person who had once provided comfort and stability at a moment when she needed it most. That truth lingered quietly, waiting for the moment she would finally gather the courage to speak it aloud. A moment that would arrive years later. In the years that followed her divorce, Jennifer Aniston rebuilt her life with a quiet determination that reflected the resilience she had carried since childhood. She continued working, choosing roles that challenged her, and allowed her to step beyond the familiar world of sitcom fame. With each new chapter, she showed the world a woman who could rise, adapt, and grow. Yet one truth remained unspoken, tucked away in the places she rarely allowed the public to see. It was not regret or longing, but a recognition of the person who had shaped her understanding of love more profoundly than anyone before or after. That truth surfaced slowly, revealing itself in gentle, unexpected moments. By 2019, more than a decade after their marriage had ended, Jennifer and Brad found themselves crossing paths again in ways that felt natural rather than forced. Award season placed them in the same rooms, surrounded by colleagues who had witnessed both their rise and their heartbreak. What surprised many was not the sight of them standing together, but the warmth that passed between them, the familiar ease that suggested their history had never been overshadowed by bitterness. Their encounters were brief, yet they carried the unmistakable tenderness of two people who understood each other on a level few could fully grasp. In early 2020, their public reconnection became one of the most discussed moments of the season, not because of speculation, but because their interactions revealed a truth long overlooked. They shared genuine affection, the kind shaped by mutual respect and years of distance that softened old wounds. When Jennifer accepted awards that year, Brad watched with admiration, celebrating her achievements not as a former partner, but as someone whose journey he deeply respected. The world saw only the surface, but those moments hinted at a bond that had endured quietly, even after life took them in different directions. Jennifer later spoke in interviews with a clarity that surprised many. She expressed gratitude for the people who had influenced her life in meaningful ways, including Brad. Her words were not dramatic or sensational, they were steady and thoughtful, grounded in respect rather than nostalgia. She acknowledged that relationships can evolve, that endings do not erase the love that once existed, and that some connections continue to matter long after the romantic chapter closes. It was in these reflections that her confession began to emerge, not in a single moment, but through a series of gentle acknowledgments that revealed the depth of their history. She described him as someone who had been important to her, someone whose presence had shaped her emotionally during a critical period of her life. She spoke with the calm certainty of a woman who had made peace with her past, allowing herself to honor what the relationship had given her without dwelling on what it could not be. Their friendship endured without romantic ties, strengthened by time, maturity, and the understanding that they had played irreplaceable roles in each other's lives. It was a relationship that no longer needed labels, defended itself against speculation simply by existing with quiet dignity. Jennifer's confession was not about rekindling or rewriting the past. It was about recognizing the truth she had carried for years, a truth she finally felt ready to share. Brad had been the relationship that shaped her most deeply, the connection that taught her what she truly needed from love, and the person who offered her a sense of safety she had rarely known before. It did not matter that their lives evolved in different directions. What mattered was the imprint, the emotional steadying, the memory of a love that held meaning long after the marriage ended. In speaking openly, Jennifer gave voice to a reality many women understand, that some loves never fully fade. They settle into the quiet corners of our lives, not as unfinished stories, but as reminders of who we were, who we became, and who we are still capable of being. Her truth was gentle, honest, and deeply human, the kind of reflection that arrives only when the heart has healed enough to tell its story, without hesitation. Jennifer Aniston's journey through love, loss, and rediscovery reveals the quiet power of connection, the kind that shapes a life long before it is fully understood. Her story shows that love does not always follow the paths we imagine, nor does it always remain in the form we hope for. What remains, however, is the imprint of those who touch our hearts, the lessons they teach us, and the strength they leave behind. In acknowledging the love that once steadied her, Jennifer demonstrates the courage to embrace her past without regret, honoring a bond that continues to shape her understanding of trust, hope, and emotional safety. Through her reflection, we witness a woman who navigated childhood fractures, immense public scrutiny, and the complexities of fame, yet held on to the belief that genuine connection exists. She reminds us that some relationships endure beyond their endings, not as dramatic stories, but as quiet truths that guide our lives in ways both profound and lasting. In the end, her confession is a testament to resilience, gratitude, and the enduring power of love that transforms even as it evolves. For more emotional stories, check out this video.